When the dust settled and the ink dried on the armistice, the Korean War began to fade away into obscurity of history. Maybe it was the fact that the Korean War started only 5 years after World War II and was a war that was perceived as an abstract conflict over ideology rather than the total war that had transformed America. Maybe it was that the Korean conflict was fought in an area of the world that many in America could not even point out on the map if they tried. These factors and many others have caused this war to become often labeled the forgotten war to most of this country. Although the Korean War may be labeled forgotten, the memories that each soldier has to share allows their stories to always be remembered.
And then they said, we're going to assign you to the 3499th Mobile Training Unit. And we had 12 instructors. 10 of us were actual instructors with a master sergeant over us and a lieutenant or a captain as our commander. My first assignment, when I got to Rantoul, they sent me to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. From there, they sent me to Great Falls, Montana. We had a squadron up there. From there, they sent me to Portland, Oregon. From Portland, Oregon, we had a squadron up there. From there, they sent me back to Rantoul, and they sent me to Peru, Indiana. And from Peru, Indiana, and each time I was there 3 months, and I would teach the mechanics, the pilots, and the base commander on what they were getting before the planes got there. So when the planes got there, they had crews to keep them and flying and all of that.
Yeah, one night I was told, I had a couple trucks and I was kind of in charge of it. They wanted some stuff hauled up further from where the troops were dug in. And so they gave me an azimuth reading and said, go up there and take this stuff up there and drop it off. Somebody would be up there. They told us there'd be people up there and we drove around dark and we couldn't find anybody. There was nobody there. And we got to the compass reading that they wanted us to go to, and we were there quite a while, and we were going further into North Korea, and we didn't think this was a good idea. So we couldn't find anybody, so we went to the location they told us to go to and unloaded it and left. We got out of there, so we didn't feel good about it, but we didn't want to get killed either.
Get up about 6 o'clock, have some breakfast, go to weather briefing. Our weatherman, Stormy, every day was going to be terrible. But by 8 o'clock you were through with that, then you start your mission briefings and tell you where you're going, what you're supposed to do, whether you're going to have an escort, whether you're going to be flying solo, whether you're going to be flying with a wingman. They'd give you a map, and in the map they'd have little targets marked. This is where we started from, near Seoul, Kimpo Air Force Base, and these are radials that directions that we fly to get to the target. This was called the Holy Land. We couldn't fly over that. That's where the peace talks were taking place. So they'd identify certain targets, maybe with just a X or something like that. If you're sitting up there cruising along at about 280 knots and looking at the ground 10,000 feet below you, and you're trying to find that little spot on the map, you'd be surprised how good some of those people got picking up targets.
I remember the day I left, because I was a nervous wreck. I couldn't eat. I was going to leave. I'd never been away from the house before, because I was going to be a track mechanic for armored vehicles. So when I got caught back to my company, they got me in a truck and hauled me back to my company, and they were in reserve right then, back off the line a couple of miles for rest. And when I got there, well, there was no job for me. So they stuck me in the tank. And in the meantime, the driver went home, so I had to move over to the driver's seat, which is on the left side. And the driver has a big responsibility. He has to keep this tank running. We never want to break down in combat. And his job is to be mechanically, and I was mechanically, so I had no trouble with my tanks. I never had a breakdown. After we pulled back from that position, went back in reserve at a different area. For reserve, we have to do a lot of inspections, and I work on the tank, and they big generals come around, and they want to see the tanks, and they always showed them my tank first, because they wanted to see the engine, so I uncovered the engine, and had this big engine in there, and I polished it all the time. I never told them what I used, but I used shoe polish. So this tank engine was like spotless, and the generals come over and said, man. So my tank was always a show tank.
Now I got assigned to the mortar section of, which is 3 guns and a gunner and a loader. And that's what I got assigned to. I never had any training on mortars, but they put me there, and they took us up to the front lines. We were assigned to protect the people that were firing a 16-inch gun off in the ocean on there. We were there to protect the forward observers. And when they got out, then we went to the West Coast, at Kimpel Airfield, and the Army had lost Kimpel Airfield, and then we took it back from the North Koreans, and then we went to what they called the 38th parallel. My role was that I had 3 mortar guns, and I had 5 people on each gun. Who had the target guy, the guy that shot it, the guy that loaded it, and the ammo carriers that carried the ammo. My role was make sure they're all going and all. It was tough for me because I never had anything to do with the mortars when I was stateside, but then I had mortar section.
They kept asking me what I wanted to do, and I says, well, I'd like to get back to my lines and go home, because line crossers, as we were called, weren't kept in Korea. I mean, it was just an Army policy. And so I kept saying, I want to go home. You know, I'm never come back here. I can't come back here and cause you any problems. So why would you want to dump me off in a prisoner work camp? So I was trying to play along with them as best I could with what I understood. Early afternoon when I finally got released, and of course I was escorted to the trail that that would have come down if I didn't go down the slides. And then let loose, and I went up the hill and hollered out, don't shoot, to the Americans, because they were in the observation post that I was supposed to get to. And they came out and helped me up and that kind of thing. You can imagine how you would feel. I'm not telling you how I felt, but I was grateful. I thank God every day for it, still do.
When I first got there, they assigned me to, they call it Charlie Block, which was near the town of Pajari, which was way up north. We could actually see North Korea from the top of the hill I was on, where we had a transmitter site. So that was exciting. That was, we never had any problems, but there were problems there. I understand that during the year I was there, which was like 13 months, but during a 1-year period around the time I was there, there were over 360 some infiltrations from the north. So that, and of course there was a big fence line that divided the two, and on either side of the fence was what they called the DMZ. There's a military demarcation line, was where the fence was, the border. And on either side of that was this DMZ. It was a zone that nobody went into. And the North Koreans would figure out how to come over to the south side, you know, and these guys all had what they called Claymore mines set up. And I don't know anything about Claymore mines. I was in the Air Force. We didn't deal with that. But I was stationed with the Army more than I was the Air Force during my time because of being in television. So anyway, these guys would come over, take these Claymore mines, which are a directional thing, and then actually turn them around, because initially they were facing north to try to repel anybody that was not supposed to be there. They'd turn them around and do all kinds of things. And there's just all kinds of incidents that happened during that time. The
questions were prompted by a gathering at our house. I knew something was up because all of the important family gatherings to that date had always taken place in one of the homes in Missouri. I asked my father what was going on and was told not to worry about it. From what I could hear, I was able to discern the conversation was centered around one of my father's brothers. I heard a phrase repeated several times that sounded like "declared dead." The hushed tones and being told not to worry about it, combined with the phrase "declared dead," set me on a long, lifelong commitment to find the answers. When Johnny died, I was 2.5 years old. I have stories that my grandparents used to tell me of being held and rocked and played with by Johnny, but I don't have the slightest recollection of him. But from that day on, Johnny never left my mind, never.
Through the stories of these heroes, the true tale of the Korean War can be shared for all to remember. These heroes sacrificed as much as any person who has ever served this country, and their stories show that the Korean conflict is just as important as any in the history of our country. From this point forward, let every man, woman, and child remember the struggles of these heroes, for their stories allow the Korean conflict to never truly be forgotten.